Okay. So yesterday we looked into experts like how do we use text function, contains function, start with function, and still we have other functions that we are going to look into them. So let me just open the notepad. Okay. So starts with text contents with the text that how do we use this contents with the text. Okay. So next function is like about the normalized space. So normalized space will help you to trim the spaces, leading and trailing spaces. Okay. So let's go to an example. Here, go to the register. I'm taking some web page wherein we are going to have some spaces for this particular element which is available on the web page. Okay. So just to summarize the yesterday's thing that we have discussed about these operators, right? So we have few other operators that we are going to discuss, and we started with contents. So contents is like it's going to what it does is like it's going to check for the substring and starts with is like it will check for the string which is starting with the particular character and it is sequence of character. And text is like if we have some elements that we want to identify the text of that element, we can use the text. Okay. So element with the help of text that we can identify. Contents is like contents will be helpful for identifying the elements along with the text function. So there are other attributes, right? ID, name, or any attributes which is related to that particular element. So normalized space is like it will trim the leading and trailing spaces. Okay. So here we are trying to identify the elements wherein particular element will have some spaces. Okay, so here we'll identify. You don't have any spaces in it. Let's go to the home page. I need to find some element which will have the space in it. Okay, so that is the reason I'm just searching for those elements here. So Windows, it should have some space here. So let me identify this particular element. It does not have space. It does not have any space in it. Let me take one of this, any of this audience or the complete update. This audience, we should have at least one of the element which has a space in it. So here we have between, but we should have, it should be a trailing array leading space. We check it here. Yesterday we had some uh, element which has a space in it, right? So we try to find out that one. So movies, and I think this is adjusted. But yesterday we saw that we have some problem with the not problem, but we had some spaces in it, right? So I'm just trying to identify this one. Okay, let's consider some other site here. So if you have any sites which has some spaces in it, so that it will be easier to handle that element. So basically in these sites, we don't have any kind of like spaces because the sites are like, well designed and they look into each and every attribute of that particular element. But few sites you can imagine like, these are the generic sites, like most of the sites are like, designed for automating the applications. So in that cases, they would put something so that they can, describe about the spaces and everything. Okay, guys, let's let's do one thing. Let me take one of the elements here, and we'll try to handle that element. Okay. We had certain things which are not, certainly it is not available now. Let's, yes. I'll try to open this one in Chrome just to, highlight the spaces. So right click on this web page, click on inspect. So you'll see this developer tool open. Yeah. So let's go and try to identify this element. Expand this. Here you can see we have LUT OK. We have some space here, and at the start of this, we don't have any spaces. But let me try to check for this other element. So then we'll get some spaces for this. See, here also we have a space at the end. Okay. So let me just click on this button also. Yeah, here also we have some spaces. Okay. So now everything is fine here. So I want to identify this element. I'll try to identify this element with the text. Okay. So I'm just copying it, Control F. So now this element is like being identified based on the text, right? So text is equals to, see, now we are able to identify this element. But what happens in case like if you directly give this, remove the space at the end, so we are not able to identify that element, right? So for this, what can we do is like, now we can use the method called normalize space. Okay. So normalize space, what it does is like, it's going to remove the, I mean like it will not consider the spaces, normalize space. So inside this, we have to give the text, and now you can see it is like it is considered. So here, like if the spaces, now spaces are removed. Okay, so let us consider. See what is happening now. It will not consider the spaces. Okay, so what is that actually? This is the actual element, right? So this is the actual element wherein we have space after the end of that particular value text. But I'm removing this. Okay, so even though we have this consideration, or remove that particular space that we are trying to ignore. So now it is like it is able to identify it. Okay. So let me take one other example here. So I'm just trying to show you a best example. Yeah, here also we have the space, right? So I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to remove this. This is a button. Okay. So we need to change its tag name. Now you see, we are able to identify it. So likewise, if we have any spaces, leading or trailing spaces, we can use normalize space. Okay, if you are identifying with the text, then what you have to do is like you have to give that particular function inside this normalize space. Okay, let me remove this one. And if I say at the end also, it will work. Okay, so but here you can see how many elements are being identified. We have 4 elements. Okay, so but here we are able to identify one element. Okay, so at the end, if you put, it will check for all the elements which has like which has the button name. Click on this, or else it is considering other toggle like whatever we have like text which is considered as part of button. Okay, so what if you want to consider uniquely, then you have to give this particular text, like end of this text, end of this text function, you have to close that. Okay, Now you see we are able to identify this particular element. Okay. So we have a small function. So wherein I'm going to use a JavaScript executor. So this JavaScript executor, what it does is like it's going to highlight that particular element. Okay. So this is only for the purpose of like just to introduce like to identify the element on the web page. So for that we are going to write a small piece of code in one of the classes. Now I'm going to create a class Selenium XPath. XPath example 6. Okay. The site is so this is the site. Okay, after this, what we are trying to do is like we want to highlight, we want to find the element. Okay, so we dot find element by dot XPath. And what is that XPath that we try to do is like we want to identify the element and ignore the spaces. Okay, copy it, paste it here. I can terminate this one. So now I want to identify this element, web element. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is like I'll just create object for the web element. So here, don't worry about this JavaScript executor. Why I'm using this JavaScript executor for now is like just to highlight the element. Okay. So I'll tell you why do we use this JavaScript executor and what are the different ways of identifying the elements with the help of JavaScript executor. Okay. How do we click? How do we use like how do we exactly use this JavaScript executor when something is not working as part of actions classes and Selenium? Okay, so this is little advanced thing that we'll be discussing. Okay, so for this we have some methods called JS execute synchronous, and here we are going to give the element that we want to identify. Okay, for this we have to write a small piece of JavaScript executor code. So that would be like arguments of so we have dot set attribute of style and the background. Here we define permitted and border 2 pixel. Just I want to just give the border for that so that we can look into it when we identify that particular element. Okay. So here we have terminated it with colon. So what this exactly does is like it will take the arguments like whatever we are trying to identify this element as like argument and its attribute. Attribute is like so we take the element and we want to set the attribute of that element as like style is style. What is that style that we want to set? And here it will give like style as well. Like this is the property. Okay, attribute of that property is like style I want to set, and its background is like yellow, and border is like 2 pixel, and it should be highlighted in the background should be highlighted in yellow, and the border should be surrounded as it will be highlighted with the red color. Okay, So this is like, simple piece of code that we are going to use to highlight the element. So this is the element that we want to highlight. Okay. So now what we do is like we want to, I'll not keep it, but we'll try to execute this program and see if that particular element is identified with the help of normalized space, and which is like removing the spaces. If any element has a spaces, leading and trailing spaces, that will be removed and it will be highlighted. So here I made a little mistake here. Yes, 1 second. So it should be terminated. So this is kind of like a piece of code that we are trying to identify, and this is like full background. Okay, so it should be surrounded with this, and this is what the arguments that we are supplying. And after that, we have an element here. Okay, so we need to close the bracket. After this, we need to close the bracket. And finally, argument should be terminated. So this is like piece of JavaScript. Okay, so don't worry. Why do we use this and all? I'll explain each and everything. To open the web page here. To highlight this element actually. Okay, so let's see what is that we're trying to identify. Okay, so here we have written the button to demonstrate, right? So I did not click on it. Let me take this one and try to identify this. Even this has a space in it, right? So we'll try to take this one and leading it. Yeah, here we got a C. What is that we have? Let me remove this and try to identify with the text first. So this is like you can see leading and trailing spaces. We have a lot of spaces here and we have a lot of spaces here. I was just trying to identify this particular element. Okay, I'll remove this normalized space now. So it's like a button. And I'm just removing this. What is that? Let me just identify. It is a button. Text is equals to. Okay, let me remove this one. Good. Copy this and paste it here. At the end, you'll see what is happening here. So we are using the text. Text is equals to some value because we have this text. Okay, so this is nothing but inner text. What we call it as like inner text. Okay, so do tab inner text, copy it and paste it. So it should identify. Then I'll try to put it under the chain declaration, but still we are not able to identify this. Okay, so in this case, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to write normalize space. Okay, I'll try to remove this. Should able to identify, but let me just refresh this page. normalized space that we are using, and we are trying to identify. Click the button to display an alert box. So this is fine. It should able to identify this one. Let me copy it again and try to paste it. If I use contents, let's see if it. Yeah, for contents, we are able to identify it. Let me remove this normalize. So is equals to, let me check the syntax, guys. Normalize space and context. Okay, so this is what we have. Normalize. Should identify. Does not have any issues here. Have the syntaxes here. So I'll just open that syntaxes, guys. Let me just check the syntax also. I'm going to share this file with you so that it will be easy for you to understand. Okay, so identifying XPaths. Yeah. So normalize space. So this is what we are trying to do it, right? So we'll put the normalized space here. That is not working. That's not the glitch with the identification. But what it is trying to do is like normalize space. Yes, text. And what is the syntax that we have here is like, okay, is equals to the value. Okay. Normalize space of it and is equals to value. Yeah. Now it's like it's able to identify all the elements. So which have like spaces in it. So it's like it identifying all the buttons. But we want only one button which is like showing as like normalized spaces, like which has the spaces in it. Let me identify in the console. How do we identify $X? And we are going to put this, okay? So it's throwing empty. On the space is equals to this throwing empty, guys. Actually, it should allow it should highlight this element here because we have the same. We did not put anything extra here and we did not remove this. Okay, let me just put directly and try to identify this element here. Okay, so it's like button. Analyze space and text equals to. So now we are going to remove the spaces out of it. Okay, let's use this one. So directly it should be here. We are trying to write the same thing. $X. Not sure why this is not allowing me to. Okay, let me just go and try to identify another element. Here also we have the space, right? So you can see here also we have the space here. Copy element and I'll paste it here. So what is that I'm going to remove is like I'll remove this and I'll take only so now it is like it is able to identify here. Okay, not sure what is the problem with that element. So let me check it again. So we'll try to copy it. I'm just trying to copy. So here complete element I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it here. Then I'll remove. Click on this. We put another thing here, contents. Contents would not be helpful here. Okay, let me check this one, guys. So this is not working, but the other element which was highlighting, right? But the thing is like it will definitely ignore the spaces that we have as part of this element. Okay, so I'll copy this and I'm going to put it here. So remove the spaces and then so it is like equals and remove the contents here. Okay, contents. Now you see we are able to identify this element. Okay, but the thing is like I need to click on this element, then only I can able to just find that element. Okay, so here also we have a normalized space. Okay, let me just check this one also. Let's go and check this one. Okay, so we have alert. Okay, contents text. Space. So this is hyperlink. Okay, so this is like a hyperlink. So earlier it was a button, now it is like a hyperlink. Let me just go and change this one. So here I'm going to change this object identification. Okay, so just to show you like how this will be ignored and how this element will be identified. Okay, I mean like spaces will be ignored and how this element will be identified. Okay, let me just go and execute this program. So now it should highlight the element which has spaces because using normalized space as like ignoring the spaces for that element. Let's see what happens here. So still it is trying to identify the element. If it is not identifying the element, let's go and try to check it again. Still it is trying to identify this element. It will because we have given implicit weight. So that's the reason why it is trying to identify this element. me execute it again. Not sure why this is not highlighting. So let me just take another example, guys, so that it will be clear for us. Let me just take some. But here, this is the best example because we have the spaces in it, right? So it should identify and it should be able to execute that. But still, it is like it's like the program is done. That execution is done, so it's not showing up in here. But the thing is, like when we use this normalized space, so it will ignore these spaces. So here in the identification, we look into it, right? So it's like trying to identify. When we have spaces here, see now it's not able to identify. But when remove the spaces, then it's like able to identify the element with the help of like a text. So how do we use it? So it's like simple syntax that we have is like tag name and normalized space. In the normalized space, we have to give the text. Text is equals to the value. Okay. So this is what we have the simple syntax for that. It can be something inside the frame. I'm just guessing because we have still. Let me take the full X path, then we'll try to identify it. Okay. So let's mouse over on it. If this is not working, let's go and try to copy the full X path of it. Control F and I'll give the full X path. So it says like this is the full X path of it. It's very simple, but still yet it is showing some thing. Again, I'm going to use normalize space and text. Text is equals to the value that we are trying to identify. So what is that? It is click on this element, get it, copy it here. See, it is able to identify. Okay, so it is able to identify. But what I will do is like I'll just put some weight here. So after the element is like the page is loaded, I'll just try to wait for some seconds so that we can see that element. Okay, so see that element get loaded. Right click on it. I'll try to. Sometimes it could be like issue with the synchronization also. Application would load slowly and the Selenium would it would move very fast. So in that cases, we have to put the synchronization. Let's do some click actions also. Let's see if it is clicking that element or not. So what I'm trying to do is like I'll just try to click on that element. Okay. So now instead of putting this like highlight, let's click on that element. Okay. I'll just close this. Don't worry, guys. This could be sometimes we have issues also, but it's like I'm trying to take some sites which are like very rigid in terms of using the applications. Okay, so that is the reason why I want to take some tough sites which will help you to identify the elements easily. I mean to understand them. How do we exactly identify this sort of elements? Let's take another element also. Let's see if this is I'll close this and try to take this element and remove the space at the end. Okay. See, now it clicked, right? So alert with OK and cancel. So it clicked on this OK and cancel. So there could be some glitches with application. Sometimes it's like synchronization is not working. So in that cases, so this could be the problem actually. Let's try to highlight this element now. So we just captured it, right? So we want to highlight that element. Wait for 5 seconds, it will click and it will try to highlight the element. Okay, so it's issue with the JavaScript extender actually, but you can see that it clicked on this element. Okay, see, now it is like highlighting. It took some time and after that it is highlighting. Okay, let me just go and execute it again. I'll close this existing browser. It's very simple, guys, but the element due to the synchronizations, it's like problem sometimes. So we are just putting some weight so that Selenium can wait for some time and identify that element. Okay, it clicked on it. Now it should highlight the element because still JavaScript executor is trying to find that element. Me mouse over on this. Now you see, it is like identifying the element. Alert with OK and cancel. Okay, just I clicked on something. There could be some glitch in this. So that is the reason why it's not able to identify. Let me just remove this flag. Okay. So this is all fine. Everything is like that. We are trying to identify the element and this is all fine. But you see, now it is like able to identify this element. Okay. So click with alert also. It will work fine because we have spaces in it. So still we can go and use that click with alert also. Like whatever we are trying to identify. I'll remove this. Now we'll see. So because it is clicking on that, and when we try to highlight, there could be like something delay in it. So that is the reason why it's like not able to highlight. Let me just put some weight here also and try to check. Okay. So let me like okay and cancel. Okay and cancel. Let's go and identify this element again. After page load, it will wait for 5 seconds. Then it will click alert with OK and cancel. Then wait for 3 seconds. Then it has to highlight that element. Okay, so to solve this, I'll try to identify this element again. Running it again, whether it will highlight or not. Okay. So not sure guys why this is behaving in this way, but you can see that it is highlighting, but the behavior is little different in this application. Okay. So if you try to do the same thing in Amazon or something, so it will easily identify the elements there. Okay. So you can check that Amazon side also. So in case of highlighting the elements. So, but I just suspect like something which is not available here because we don't have any spaces for the elements. Okay. So let's try to inspect some element wherein we can identify and highlight them. So cleaning up this. For example, you see, I want to highlight this set of elements here. So what I need to do is like, I need to identify this element. Then after I can apply the highlight. Okay. So, but I'm just trying to see something wherein we have some spaces in it. But you see, we don't have any spaces because this is like, real-time application wherein we don't use such set of things here. Okay. So set of things would not be there. The spaces after and before this particular element. But this is like kind of a demo site wherein we are able to see the spaces because of some, not in, because of some not good development practices. Okay. So here also you can see when I just double click on it. So you see a lot of spaces here, right? So it should be able to identify the element without like, if we have a space of leading and trailing and leading spaces, here you can see there are spaces. This spaces should be ignored. So when we work with that normalized space. Okay. So let me remove this. So it should identify it. It should not cause any set of problem. But here I see that there is some glitch in the application. Okay. So likewise, what we do is like we try to identify the elements and elements by removing the spaces, leading and trailing spaces. So for that, what we do, we are going to use this normalized space. Okay. So in interviews, if they ask you like, how do we remove these trailing and leading spaces, then you can let them know that we have a function called normalized space. So this function will help you to identify the elements by removing the spaces, leading and trailing spaces. Okay. So another one is like we have other application. I'm just trying to open the application. It's kind of like a practice application. So here we don't have any set of. We'll try to identify some objects or methods which will have spaces in it. Okay, so that I can show you because this site is little organized. But spaces, see now this is like organized, well organized, so we don't have any elements which has spaces, leading and trailing spaces. But when you see that element or when you see that particular page, right, so it has got some set of spaces in it. Okay, so if you have any spaces like before and after that particular text, then we can go and use that method, normalized space. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So this is the example of like normalized space. I'll just do it as like nice underscore space. Okay, I'm just naming this class as like normalized space. So specifically we were discussing about this, right? So we can use normalized space. Okay, so let's get into the next one. So I have a list of things here. So now you can see we discussed about like normalized space. How do we use the normalized space? So just we have to use this normalized space, and within that we can use the text and we can just go ahead with this. Okay, and next one is like we have a last 10 position. Okay, so these are the two methods, and there is another one that we have to discuss is like not. Okay, so we'll discuss not also. So here last is like, for example, go here and you want to type, you want to identify some element here. Okay, you can see that there is a kind of a table here, and you want to identify the last element of that particular row. For example, here you see this row and this last, this is what cell that I want to identify. So how do we identify this one? So first we have to mouse over on this particular page. Now you can see this is like a table product. Okay, so table ID is equals to product. So Control F will try to identify it. Okay, so table that ID is equals to product. We got the table. Okay, so after that what we have is like tr, tbody and everything. So directly I'm going to tr. So double slash is like indirect shells. Okay, so after that td. Now, so before see now what happens is like it's going to identify let's code and everything, but I want to identify the last element in that particular row. For example, this is like, we have like, tr is like It's kind of like a row, and TD is like a cell value. I want to identify the last value of that particular row. Okay. So what I'm going to do is like, I'll just put last. See, what it is doing is like in this particular row, it's going to identify the last element. Okay. So first row, last, and there could be like, number of columns increasing. Okay. Number of columns increasing. See now what is happening now? All last values of that particular rows are identified. Okay. All identified here. So now the thing is like, now I want to identify only the element in the last element of that first row. Then what I have to do here, I'll be putting some indexes. Okay. So indexes. So TR of 2. Now we see. So TR of 1 is like, TR is like already we have, these are like headers. So that is the reason why we are not able to see. I'll explain about like what are headers, what are rows, and what are data. For now is like, you can understand, like if you want to identify some elements here in the last. Okay. So this is in terms of tables. But what if in case like we have some set of drop downs here, I want to identify the last drop down. So here also we have some set of things like, let's go here and try to identify. Okay. So here you see, we have a lot of things which are available as part of this particular all. Okay. So, but I want to identify the last element of it. Okay. Last element of it. So how do I do it now? So I'll be using list of web elements for that. Okay. In that case, we can go and identify the last element of it. But now you see, we have something here. So which is like group. Okay. So which is kind of like a group here. So here, yeah. So in this, I want to identify the last element. So what is the last element in this? So we have a lot of divs here, right? So in that div, we have a lot of, yeah, hyperlinks are also available here. So, but in this case, I want to identify the last element of it. Okay. So to identify the last element, what I'm going to do is like, I just showed you in table, but I'm trying to identify the elements which are there as part of like menus. Okay. So this is one example to use this last element, like whichever element is like last. So it will help you to identify with the help of last function. In this case, I'm going to use another technique here, like one other approach, not a technique, but approach here. So here I'm going to take the class view. Z class is equals to this one. So what is it? No, what is it doing now? Okay, so we have two last here again. So what is it doing now? So it is trying to identify the elements with the nav list. Nav left is like the identifying the element which is there. Okay, let me take the main here so that it will be easy for us to identify the element uniquely. That is of ID. Okay, so there is only one ID of it. So now I want to find out the last one of it. So what it is doing now? It is the only one. That is the reason why it is not showing up anything. But now I want to identify slash. When I say slash double slash A, so it's going to identify all the elements which are there. Like there are 32 child items, but I want to find out the last child. Okay, so that's nothing but 33. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'll just use the last. See, so these are the 3 last childs which are available. Okay, so last will be used to identify the elements at the position which is shown as like last. Okay, so this is the syntax wherein it will highlight the elements which are there as part of like last. Okay. You can see these are the elements. So if you want to identify them uniquely, so that is also quite possible. We can put everything inside this and we can still identify them. Okay. Here also one thing we can do. Okay, now you see uniquely identifying. So put everything inside the bracket and I want to identify the last elements which is like coming. We have like last 3 elements it is showing, but in that also I want to identify the element uniquely. Okay, so let me just enter. So shop made easy download app. So this is the last element of it. Let me just go and try to write a program for this. Last function of XPath. Okay, how do we use the last? Last is like to identify the last element of that particular web page. Okay, I mean like last chain. Here I'll put it. What is that side? We are going to change the side here. So this is Control C. Here I'm going to put the Control V. Here also I'm putting some synchronization. I'll not click. Just I want to highlight the element. Okay. See, can you see this red background here? So highlighted with red here. I'll just try to. Yeah. Now can you see this one? So it is identifying the element. Okay. So it is identifying the element and it is highlighted with the border red. Okay. So this is how we'll be identifying the element. Like when we use the last. Okay. So now the thing is like we looked into the last and there is another method which we use like position. Okay, before discussing about the positions, I want to discuss about the indexes. Okay, how do we use the indexes? Okay, what is the syntax of last now? Last is like directly if you want to identify some element with, so I'll go here, identify the element, last function. Okay, I just remove this thing. So here I'll name it as like last. So it's like normal space. Indexing, we'll try to look into the indexing. See, now we'll go back to this. And here, you can see there are some objects which are available here, right? So there are some objects which are available here. I'll just click on this. Otherwise, I'll refresh this. Now, when you go and mouse over on this, see what is that it is showing up? These are like kind of all the child elements. Okay, all the child elements like which has the hyperlink here. Okay, the tag name is here. Okay, so what I want to do is like I want to identify, for example, I want to identify the mobiles. Okay, so we have multiple ways of identifying this particular element on this web page. Okay, so first is like I'll try to write the XPath to just get that group of class. So this is kind of like a class. Under that we have a lot of elements which are shown as like hypertags. Okay, I want to identify the elements. Now you see there are like 31 child items. So if I want to identify the element with the text, okay, so mobiles. Okay, now I could able to identify this element very easy. But in case if we have like this is like repeated, okay, repeated in the sense now you see I want to just identify them uniquely. Okay, so do we have any elements which are like duplicated? Okay, cell line sellers. Okay, so we have cell line sellers. Let me just see that. Contents. Cell. Okay, what it is doing now? See, we have two objects identified on this web page. How do we uniquely identify them now? So to identify them uniquely, we have a method called indexing. Okay, so indexing. I want to identify the first element of it. Okay, first element of it. So for this, what you have to do is like you have to put everything. Okay, whatever we have like XPath here. So everything should be put under this circular bracket. Inside that we can write the XPath. Okay, XPath, and after this you want to identify the element based on the indexes, okay, which is available at the first index, it will identify. Now it's like If you take the second one, it will identify the second element. Okay. So it's like first element, it will identify first element. If you want to identify the second element, you need to give like this. Okay. So in this case, what it does is like it will go and identify the element which has the text, which contains the text as self. Okay. So likewise, we have a lot of elements which will like, which will be repeating on that particular web page. To identify them uniquely, we'll be using the indexing. Okay. We'll be using the indexing. So this is one way of using the indexing. Okay. So first we'll see this one programmatically, then we'll go and try to identify the other elements with the index. Okay. So let me just go and try to copy the URL. Bring the URL here. I'll wait for this. The background yellow and border it is showing like red background. And after that it is closed, terminated. Yes. So let's execute this program and see which element will be identified. See, now it is highlighting this cell. Okay, do you see this background is like yellow and we have a border? Yes, it is like sometimes we have issues with the application also. If they're not syncing or not getting identified, elements not getting identified, we have to just go with the other approaches. For that, we have a JavaScript executor that we'll discuss down the line. Okay, but now you see that it is highlighting this particular cell. Okay, so if you want to highlight this best seller, then what you have to do is like you need to just change the index of it. Okay, so just change the index of it and execute this. Now it will highlight the second element is the best sellers. Okay, but the next condition is like this is like based on index. We know that what is the text of it, but if you are not sure about what is the name of that particular element which is located at particular location. Okay, under this child, I want to like I just got the information like I need to select the fourth element, third element, second element. Likewise, I got the indexing. Okay, so what I can do is like I can just go with indexing directly. Okay, so indexing directly. How do we use that indexing directly? Is like I'll show you. So I'll try to write this one as a separate function. Okay, public, because we are going to use that one. Okay, public static void highlight. For this highlight, I'm going to use this one. So this is the reason we are going to make it as like a static, because it will be available for all the methods. So d is equals to. So what is that I need to pass here? So I need to pass the web element. Okay. So I'm going to call it here. So I got the element identified. So this element I'm going to pass it. Okay. So highlight and the element. Now, as we discussed, like we want to identify the element based on the indexing only. Okay, this is one way of using the indexing. The other way is like I'll show you other ways. Now I'm going to remove this. So just I want to identify the third element of it. Okay, under that particular third child. Okay, so now you see it is identifying the third child. So if I want to identify the fifth child, we'll identify fifth child. I want to identify the seventh child, so I can identify the seventh child. Okay, so here indexing will start from 1. Okay, so 1 you see Amazon Mini TV. So 7, we can give the index. Now let's go and close this. So here I'm going to remove everything. I'll put this one. Go and save this. So which element should be I highlighted now? Seventh element. Okay, seventh element under that particular parent. See, electronics is a seventh element. You can count now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so electronics is the seventh child under this particular elements. Okay, so parent element. So now the thing is like we can use the indexing like this, and the other way of using the indexing is like, so let me just the first one we have already used this, right? So let me just give that example also. So that yeah, we'll take this one. Okay, that's it here. So first time it will identify this element. And second time this will identify this element. Okay, I'll just put some weight here. So that after this I'll put in some weight here. After this I'll put some weight here. Okay. So now this is like first way. Okay. So index identify element with index. So it's first way. Now second way is like, and third one is like we can use the position. Okay, the function is like we can use the position function. Okay, here I'm going to give the I'll show you over there so that it will be easy for you to understand. Okay, so I'm just closing this. This is very important, guys. Because of this reason, I'm trying to show you a difficult examples. So wherein you can practice this and get the idea of how to use it. Okay. So position. Okay. Position is equals to 4. So what it is doing now? So it is also identifying based on the indexing. Okay. This is another method which is available. Okay. So additionally, we can use this also. Additionally, we can use this also. So here what I'm to do is like, I'll just change this one. I'll paste it. Okay. So first it will identify the cell. Let me just take something position as like 10. Let's go and execute this. Okay. First it should identify the cell. Then it should identify the position 7 at electronics is located and 10th position when some other element is located. So cell is identified, and after that it will identify the electronic, and after that it will identify the 10th element. So it can be anything like home, kitchen or something. Home and kitchen. See, all the 3 elements are highlighted. So this is using the indexing to identify the element uniquely. If we have some element which is like, which has a text, similar text. Okay. So similar text. Here also we have a cell and here also we have a cell. Okay. I'm using contains. So that is the reason why what it is doing is like it's trying to identify the elements. So unique elements are not identified. But what is happening in that case? What is happening in that case is like it is showing 2 elements at a time, but I want to identify them uniquely. So for that, what we have to do, we have to put everything like what we have identified as part of X bar into a circular bracket, then give the index. So here it is like directly you can give the index because we are identifying based on the index. Okay, direct index. So here it is like we can use the we can use the position also, which will help you to identify the element. Okay, just at the position. So I'm coming to the last here is like we can have a number of elements. Okay, I'm not sure like there can be 100, 200, or it will be a growing list. I'm not sure about the what index that I want to identify. I want to identify the last element of it. In that case, we can go and use the last. Okay, instead of putting this index. Okay, so today we have 7 elements. Tomorrow we make it 10 elements. I want to identify the last element. I assume like today I saw that manually I just went to that application and saw that there are only 10 or any 7 children on this particular element. So I have to click position 7. So this is like today it is last, but tomorrow there may be a growing list. Okay. So a list may grow and we can have like 10 more elements there. So tomorrow when we look into it, 17th element is the last element. So in that case, what happens now? I cannot use this one, right? So this will be a middle element. So to use that one or to get the element, last element, we can use the last one. Okay. So if you want to see that one, so directly you can give the last here. So we already discussed about the last, right? So just I'm showing you in case of like if you want to identify the last element without using the index. Okay, so we gave the cell there, right? So I need to remove that cell. Otherwise, it will identify the last element. Oh, sorry, we have just identified this. I'm sorry for that. Let me just go ahead. Here I did not put the indexing. I'll put the index 1. This is like complete XPath. After that, we are putting the index. That is first way of identifying the element. The home and kitchens, it is like last element it is showing. We have to identify with the help of position. 10th position. So last element we are not able to identify because now you see that there can be a growing list for this. So then it is like the element is hidden. Okay, the element is hidden. But when you try to use this same method here, instead of position, I want to identify the last element here. So when it's the last, okay, see Kindle ebooks, but Kindle ebooks are not shown here. Okay, the element is not shown here, but it is available. Okay, so but it is available. In this case, what is happening is like we can, if you are not able to identify the element, the help of like last element that we are trying to use this last function, then we have another approach. Okay, JavaScript excluder. We are going to use that JavaScript excluder and we are going to identify this element. Okay. So it is same in this case also. If you have any tables defined here and if you want to identify any tables, now you see it is like I showed you in case of like, the second row, first row. So you want to identify this. So we'll work on these tables, web tables when we are talking about web tables. Just I want to show you how do we identify the elements from tables also, from the list and from the drop down also I'll show you. How do we identify the last elements or any elements which has the text like, what is that option that you want to select. Okay. So when you are talking about like select classes. So now it is, we discussed about position, last and indexing also. I'll write the indexing here with indexes. Okay. So what is that simple example is like tag name. And here you can give the attribute is equals to value. Then you can give the index. So this is one. Another one is like tag name, attribute, attribute equals to value. And you can put everything into it. Other one is like you can use position also. That is equals to index. Okay, so this is about indexes. Okay. Sorry guys, I really find it very hard when I try to use this site for identifying the elements, okay, for the normalization. But definitely it will work. There is no doubt about it. But object identification, like some applications would not help you to identify the set of elements. So in this case, what we do is like we are going to use the JavaScript executor. I'll discuss about this. How do we identify that element and get that element and perform the actions on them? Okay. So I found it really hard, but in the previous classes that I was discussing, I could able to identify them easily. Not sure about why this is not working here, but definitely it will work when we are not taking this normalize. Okay. But in case of contents, it will work. Here, what we are trying to do is like we are trying to use this contents functions. Okay. Contents will directly check for that particular element here. And what is that? It is showing contents. And it is a button actually. It's not a hyperlink, it's a button. So now we are able to identify it, right? I want to show this example as part of normalization. Okay, normalization space. So it should work, but not sure why it did not work. Let me check this one. Normalize space equals to see. But normalized space, like you can see normalized space text and it is of button type, but still it is not able to identify this element. But what is the, oh, I just gave the wrong spelling here, normalized space, okay. So still it is not identifying the element, okay. So don't worry if it is not working in this way. So you can use contents also, okay. So you can use contents also. For everything we have a alternates here. Contents, text, and now it is identifying this element. Okay. So we have alternates, but the thing is like I want to show you the specific way of identifying the elements. Okay. So this also we can use. We talked about normalized space, and then we are going to talk about like not XPath. Okay. So how do we use not in the XPath? Okay. So for example, you see and we used, are we used. Okay. So indexing also we have here, but not we did not discuss, right? Yeah. So let's go ahead and try to discuss not function. Why I'm discussing in detail is like, guys, this is very important. If you are well versed with the XPath identification, then most of the things in Selenium is done. Remove these things. So here I have this XPath defined. So I'm going to remove this one. So when do we use not is like, if something is like not that particular element. For example, let me just go to this card side. We'll refresh this page. I'll take something. Okay. So div, I'm going to use not. Not is a function. So not, I'm going to say that contains. So what it is trying to do is like, it will try to identify the element which is not a cell. Okay. So which is not defined as part of cell. Let me just remove this not now. See what is the count here? 819 elements are identified. Okay. So let me just remove this. 895 elements are identified. Okay, which contains cell is like we have 6 elements. Okay. If I say I'm just taking the anchor tag, okay. So I just want to filter out with not, okay. So which is like, not this particular cell. So there are like 479 hyperlinks which are not a cell. Okay. So which does not have cell C. Now you can just see this. So it is ignoring this. See. In between you can see this, right? Okay. To filter it out, what I'm going to do is like I'll add div under this particular nav shop, I want to identify the elements which is not part of cell. Okay, so ID nav shop double slash. Now you see, so 21 elements, 29 elements are there. Okay, so now you see, when I just try to count it, I'll go back again. The first element is this is first element. These two are ignored. Okay, these two are ignored. So what I'm putting the condition is like which does not, like text which does not have this element, that I'm going to identify. Okay, if I have contents like cell, how many elements would be identified under this? Only two elements, right? So it's like just you want to filter, just you want to filter. So if you want to filter, then what we can do is like we can use the not. Okay, so not is the function which will help you to filter, which will ignore this cell text, which has the element cell text, that will be ignored, and rest of the elements will be identified. Okay, rest of the elements will be identified. Let's go and try to check the list of them. Okay, so we'll highlight all of them and we'll get the size here. Okay, if we get the size, then we have to use the list of web elements that we'll discuss down the line, but we'll try to identify the elements which are not this cell. Okay. So it will identify only one element, because web element, what it does, it's going to return the first occurrence of the element. Okay, so whenever we are trying to identify the element with the help of d dot find elements, it's going to return the first occurrence. So that is the reason why it is trying to identify the element which is located in the first position. Okay, so this is how we'll be using the not, guys. Okay, not is like just it's going to filter out. It's going to identify the elements which does not have the text cell. Okay, so if you remove this, contents will try to identify. This is like kind of a inverse. Okay, not will filter, contents will consider. Okay, not will is like it will ignore those things, content will consider those things. Okay, so that is the only difference between not and contents. Okay, so you can use any one of these. Like if you want to use, like for example, here I'll go and show it. It's not like only we can use it with this particular thing. So when you say not, should list down, guys. Okay, sorry. This can be used only with the help of like methods actually. Okay, so contents ID. I just missed out that contents ID. So what is that? We have it's see, now it is like it will ignore that particular element. Okay, so it's nothing but it's going to ignore that particular element. When you say contents, I see the length is like the size of this like 911. So when I remove this not, and only I'll consider the contents, so it will list down to. Okay, so it's nothing but not will be considered. So not only with the text that we can do with the rest of the elements with the help of like contents. Okay, so it should be used with conjunction of contents. So or any functions. Okay, so you can use the text also. If you want to use it here, you can use the contents text and you can filter it. Okay, so these are the examples of not and whatever we have discussed here. So I'll just try to list it down. Here I'll use, what is that? Tag name, not, tense, this text, maybe the value, close it. Okay, so this is a syntax of not. So we discussed all the syntax, guys. What are those? Like, I'll repeat it again. And or operator, we used indexing also. Methods of XPath that we have: text contains is in the text, starts with normalized space also. Last, just give this functions here. I'm going to upload this notepad, guys. Okay, no, this file, please look into this. Okay, so last position and indexes also. Indexes in three different ways, and is like not also. Okay, so not operator. So how do we use this not operator? Not function is like directly we can use with the condition of contains or text. So still we have another things, guys, that we are going to discuss as part of our XPath identification. So these are very, very important. So XPath accesses. Okay. So XPath accesses, we have parent, ancestor, descendant, falling, preceding, falling child, falling sibling, preceding sibling. Okay. So whenever you are trying to identify, for example, if you want to identify this particular element, okay. So this element. So this element I want to identify based on this. So how do we identify this element? So just I'm going to give a glance on it. So tomorrow we'll be looking at that. Okay. So now you see, this is kind of like a parent to this element. Okay. I want to identify this particular element based on the parent. Okay. Based on the parent. So now we have spaces here. So luckily we got something which we can identify. Div, normalize, space, result element. We can give the text here actually, but text will not be available, right? So this is like a class. Unfortunately, we cannot use this at the rate of symbol, but yeah. So if I say contains, or we can use this one. Let me try. Yeah. So we are able to identify it, but the thing is like it is how many elements are identified here? So more than the elements that we are trying to identify. But here we got only one element at a time. Okay. So after this, so what is that actually I got? So this is the element I got, right? Search context. I want to identify this element actually. Based on this, like, I'll be taking reference as this particular element. Okay. So I'm taking reference as this particular element. So after this, I want to identify this element. Okay. So now you see, this is search tab, and this is one, and this is the, which one I need to identify? All. Okay, all is located here. So how do I identify now? It's like, now you see how I'm going to identify. This is child to this. Okay. So this is parent and this is child. And this is somewhere it is located, but this is kind of like a sibling to this. Okay. So this is like, at the same level. If the elements are at same level, we call them as like sibling. If the element are like one level down, then we call it as like a child element or falling element. Okay. So this is kind of like this is like a parent element, and this is kind of like a child element. Okay. So let's see that how do we identify this now. So here what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to use sister div. So it is going to the top div. Okay. So top div is like ancestor of this. All divs are like, there's a div located here. But I want to identify which div I want to identify here. So this is what I just took it, right? So I want to identify this one. So what I'm going to do is like, I'll take this, and here div @ class is equals to now left div of divs. Okay. So because why it is not directly identified is like, we have middle lot of divs are there. Okay. Lot of divs are there. So I'm going to use the chain declaration. Okay. Div inside the div. Now you see we got this. See, under this what we have is like, we have a span. Okay. So under that what we have is like text is equals to, if you say all, so what it does is like, it's going to identify the all. So what we are doing is like, we are taking this one as like reference. Okay. So this is like a reference, and on top of it, what I'm trying to do is like, I'm trying to identify this all elements. So which is not available directly. For example, which is not available directly, or which is like, preceding of it, or which is like, if you want to click on this is kind of like a following. This is kind of like element. The preceding to it is like this one is preceding and this one is like following. Okay, so we can still go and use the preceding. If it is like a preceding within the same node, if we have that within the same node or which is available at this node, then we can go and use the preceding. But ancestor is like what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to identify from the top. Okay, so let's try to identify this one with the help of like preceding. Now we got it right. See, what if we are trying to do is like we have this element located here under this form. Okay, so nav left, nav right is like, so we are trying to nav search. Where is that nav search? Let me just expand this one or this one. Yeah. So what I'm doing is like I'm going preceding in the sense I'm trying to identify the elements which are about to me. Okay, so this is like, this is the element, and which is about to me is like these are the elements which are about to me, and I'm searching for that. Okay, nav left, here it is not there. Nav left, here I have. Okay, so here I can see this nav left. So preceding element under this div nav left, and under that we can see the span. Okay, so this double slash is like indirect child. Okay, these are like all chains. Now indirect child is like it can be some grand chain. Okay, following element. So here you can see span id is equals to text and all. Okay, now we got this. So we can use ancestor. Ancestor is like directly it will come from the top. Okay, ancestor div. Is that? We got okay, let me write it again, guys. It's like easy. Div contains and class. What is that nav? Search. It is identifying this nav search scope, and I'm going to use ancestor. Ancestor is coming from the top. Okay, so ancestors, if we say ancestors, what we are trying to do is like we are trying to identify the elements based on the ancestors. Here red class is equals to nav left. Okay, nav left, and under that we are going to identify the span with the help of like text is equals to all. See, this is how we'll be identifying the elements here. So we have two walls here, so which is showing as like two walls. So which all you want to select is like, again we are going to use the indexing. The first all I want to select. So directly put everything inside this. Now I can identify this element. Okay, so we'll discuss about these things in detail, guys. This is very important, and I'll show you the example and have like clear diagram. How do we consider? I mean, what are the elements which are like preceding, or how do we identify these elements are preceding or following elements that have a clear picture of it. I can show you that one. So tomorrow we'll be discussing about this. Okay, it's like here we are and siblings at the same level. We call it siblings. And if we have like kind of like top, when we are going top, these are kind of like a parent elements. When we are coming down, this will be like parent to this child, and this will be a parent to this child, and this will be a parent to this child. And if it's a descendant, it's like going down. Okay, these are kind of like children, grandchildren. Likewise, it will move on. From this also, it's going like grandchildren, children, and move. So under the same level, we call them as like siblings. At the above, we call them as like parents. Below, we call them as like child. And if it's like immediately, if it is available, then it's like following child, immediate, like following child. Okay, this is like thing, but following siblings or not child, following sibling. And here, if it is like immediately about to me, okay, one level about to me, that's nothing but preceding sibling. It's following sibling, preceding sibling, which comes under me, and it can be like hierarchy of me, which is going like 1, 2, 3, 4. In that case, we call them as like descendant. I'll explain this in detail, and these are the things that we'll be considering. Okay, so this is very, very important. And interviews, they are going to ask you about like what are the accesses and how do we use that accesses to identify the element. Okay, so for today I'll stop it, guys. I just took the time. Moreover, like we'll be taking more time now. I want to shift the class timings, guys. From 8 o'clock I want to take. So 8 to 9:30 or probably 10. So we can cover there are a lot of things that we have to cover. Okay. So I just don't want to skip any one of this. So that is the reason why I'm trying to give the examples on these sites, which are like, which these sites could be sometimes weird. Now you saw that, right? So we are trying to identify the elements here. With the same code, we are able to identify the elements here. It is finding easily. And here also it is finding easily. But on this side, it's not finding easily. Okay. So it's like it is taking some time, or the element is not identified in a proper way. Okay. So I'll try to cover as many sites as possible. So that is the reason why I'm taking some sites like Orange HRM, register. Okay. So this is one site that will be working. Alerts is like, this is like one site, demo site. Another one is like practice page. We have all the elements which are available here. And like I'm taking one real-time application. That's nothing but Amazon. Okay. So that we can easily understand how do we identify the elements. Okay. Okay, guys. Thanks for your time. Please practice this. It's very important. You cannot remember because there are a lot of things that we are working. Okay. Okay, guys, thanks for your time. I'm going to upload these programs, whatever we have discussed. Please practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.